I asked Nick what he thought. What could his father have done? But Nick had no answer. Not at a dinner, maybe not ever. Maybe there was nothing Rob could
called him. At 95, Clint Eastwood is finally pulling back the curtain on the forces that shaped him and on why he views figures like Rob Reiner the way he does today. Born Clinton Eastwood Jr. on May 31, 1930 in San Francisco, he entered the world during the Great Depression, a time when comfort was rare and survival ruled every decision. Stability wasn't promised. It was chased day by day, paycheck by paycheck. His family drifted across California searching for work, and that restless upbringing carved self-reliance straight into his bones. It also taught him something else, how to guard his emotions fiercely. Clint wasn't loud or showy as a kid. He watched, he listened, he spoke only when it mattered. That cool, observant stillness would later become his most powerful weapon on screen. Music became his first refuge, especially jazz and piano, shaping his sense of rhythm, mood, and restraint. That stripped-down style later defined not just his performances, but his directing too. After high school, there was no golden shortcut waiting. Eastwood hustled through real, grinding jobs: lifeguard, lumberjack, gas station attendant, standing shoulder to shoulder with working-class Americans and learning grit the hard way. That blue-collar reality never left him. And Hollywood? It didn't exactly welcome him with open arms. After serving in the U.S. Army, Clint drifted into acting almost by accident. Universal Pictures signed him in the mid-1950s, then dismissed him just as quickly. Studio bosses mocked his looks, dragged his voice, and said he had no charisma. Cold words meant to break him, but instead they hardened him. Clint stayed patient. He trained, took scraps, and refused to twist himself into a studio puppet. His break finally arrived in 1959 with Rawhide, where he played Rowdy Yates for 8 long seasons. The paycheck was steady, but creatively, he felt trapped. So he made a move no one expected, ditching American television for Italian cinema. That gamble didn't just raise eyebrows, it shook the entire industry. Enter Sergio Leone and the Dollars Trilogy. A fistful of dollars for a few dollars more, and the good, the bad, and the ugly.
The whole movie, I thought, was Rob coming to terms with that inescapable fact. And all the cheer and the pride, well-earned as it was, could simply not illuminate that darker, more severe reality.
These films didn't just revive Eastwood's career, they forged a legend. They flipped the Western genre upside down and burned the old rulebook to ash. Clint's Man with No Name wasn't loud or chest-thumping. He barely spoke, he barely blinked, and yet he dominated every frame. That cold stare, that slow walk, that silence, it said more than pages of dialogue ever could. He wasn't clean-cut or heroic in the old-school sense, and that's exactly why it landed so hard. Eastwood rewrote masculinity on screen. No speeches, no flair, no begging for approval. His power came from restraint, presence, and the feeling that something dangerous was always simmering just beneath the surface. Audiences felt it instantly, and Hollywood noticed. The success of those films didn't just make him famous. It gave him control. Control over his roles, his direction, and his future, something the studio system almost never gives away.
That's tough because as a parent...
It feels so right.
Well, as a parent, you know, everybody runs into this at some point with a child where you want to will things to be true, right? That you think you can command things to happen, and you can't. And the most insecure you'll feel, the most vulnerable you'll feel as a parent is knowing there are some things that are outside of your control.
Totally.
You know, which is terrifying.
When Clint returned to Hollywood in the late 1960s and 1970s, he wasn't asking for permission anymore. He was calling the shots. Dirty Harry turned him into box office gold. Harry Callahan was blunt, brutal, and unforgiving, and the debates were relentless. Some saw him as a voice for public rage. Others called him extreme. Eastwood didn't flinch. He insisted his characters weren't slogans, they were flawed people surviving in messy worlds. What stunned critics most was his range. He wasn't locked into one lane: westerns, action, thrillers, dramas, even comedies. He tore through all of it with films like Play Misty for Me, High Plains Drifter, The Outlaw Josie Wales, Every Which Way But Loose, and Escape from Alcatraz. Behind the scenes, Clint was absorbing everything. He wasn't just acting, he was studying. When he stepped fully into directing, his style was clean, fearless, and efficient. Few takes, natural light, no wasted motion. He trusted actors and let stories breathe instead of forcing them. His films explored aging, regret, violence, redemption, and the cost of choices, not flashy lessons, but quiet punches that landed late. That vision detonated with Unforgiven. The film stripped the myth of the heroic gunslinger bare and exposed the brutal cost hiding behind the legend. It wasn't nostalgia, it was reckoning. And by then, Clint Eastwood wasn't just part of Hollywood history. He was shaping how it would be remembered. The industry couldn't ignore it anymore. Unforgiven stormed the awards circuit, earning Clint Eastwood Academy Awards for Best Director and Best Picture, sealing his status as a serious filmmaking force. No longer just a star, he was a master builder of cinema itself.
Everything he could do to help his son. He had even set in motion the Hollywood machine to help his son. And yet there was nothing he could do to fully help his son. Some things are beyond our greatest effort.
That's heartbreaking. That's tough.
What followed was a relentless run of hits: Mystic River, $1 Million Baby, Letters from Iwo Jima, Gran Torino, Changeling, and American Sniper, each one stacking his legacy higher and harder to challenge. The respect wasn't limited to Hollywood. Europe took notice, and then went further. Eastwood earned 3 Caesar Awards, a rare honor that proved his influence didn't stop at American borders. Add the AFI Life Achievement Award to the list, and the message was undeniable. Clint Eastwood didn't just appear in cinema history, he shaped it. By the early 2000s, his global status was locked in tight. The Venice Film Festival awarded him the Golden Lion for Lifetime Achievement, one of the most revered honors in world cinema. This wasn't a nod to a single hit or a nostalgic salute to the past. It was recognition of decades built on moral gray zones, restrained emotion, and a directing voice that only grew sharper with age. France, long known for treating film like fine art, didn't just admire Eastwood, they formally crowned him. In 1994, the country named him a commander, recognizing how deeply his work reshaped culture far beyond American screens. Then they doubled down. In 2007, he received the Legion of Honor, France's highest civilian decoration, placing Clint in an elite circle of artists whose influence cuts across nations, languages, and generations. Taken together, these honors paint a clear picture. Eastwood wasn't just successful, he was timeless. His legacy didn't belong to one country or one decade. It kept growing quietly, redefining cinema on a global level, often far from the spotlight. But while his professional stature soared, his private life told a more complicated story. Clint's longest and most fragile relationship was his marriage to Margaret Neville Johnson, known to those close to her as Maggie. They met in 1953 when Clint was broke, unknown, and grinding through life with no safety net and no guarantees. He bounced between odd jobs, lifeguard, laborer, anything that paid, while chasing acting dreams that kept slipping just out of reach. Maggie was steady, calm, and grounded, the emotional counterweight to Clint's uncertain future. She brought balance when everything else felt unstable. They married on December 19, 1953, beginning a partnership that would stretch across more than 3 turbulent decades. In those early years, money was tight and stress was constant. Success felt distant, almost imaginary. Through rejection after rejection, Maggie stayed solid, quietly carrying the emotional weight while Clint absorbed every closed door. When Rawhide finally hit in 1959, everything flipped overnight. Fame, money, and attention poured in fast, and so did pressure. As Clint's stardom exploded with Sergio Leone's Man with No Name films and later Dirty Harry, the marriage came under relentless strain. The spotlight didn't just transform his career, it rewired their entire world. Success arrived loud, heavy, and unforgiving, testing that bond in ways neither of them had anticipated. The grind never slowed. Clint's schedule intensified, his independence hardened, and the balance at home began to tilt. What once felt like a united front slowly shifted as the weight of fame reshaped priorities and pulled at the seams of a relationship built long before the world knew his name. Margaret Neville Johnson stayed far from Hollywood's noise, choosing privacy and a low-key life over red carpets and flashing bulbs. That widening gap between Clint Eastwood's towering public image and Maggie's quiet, grounded world only grew sharper with time. Their marriage wasn't smooth, far from it. Long stretches apart became routine, and Clint's infidelities were widely known, something he later acknowledged without dodging or dressing it up. And still, they remained legally married for decades. It wasn't denial, it was complexity. Duty, history, and a shared sense of responsibility kept them tethered long after romance faded. Together, they raised 2 children. Kyle Eastwood, born in 1968, carved his own respected path as a jazz musician, while Allison Eastwood, born in 1972, stepped into acting and filmmaking. Maggie became the quiet anchor, holding the family steady and shielding the children from as much Hollywood chaos as she could manage. In 1978, after 25 demanding years, Maggie and Clint officially separated. But even then, the story refused to end cleanly. The divorce dragged on until 1984, exposing just how deeply intertwined their lives and finances had become. When it finally concluded, it sent shockwaves through Hollywood. The settlement was massive, reflecting Clint's towering success and Maggie's decades spent standing beside him during his climb. Yet even after the split, Maggie Johnson's place in Clint Eastwood's life never vanished. She was there before fame arrived, endured the pressure when it exploded, and helped raise their children far from the industry's excess. The relationship wasn't perfect, but it left a permanent mark. It shaped Clint's understanding of family, responsibility, and the real cost of ambition. Now at 95, Clint Eastwood speaks with rare clarity. There's no need to impress, no need to soften the truth. Looking back on more than 70 years in Hollywood, he isn't just reflecting on his own journey. He's watching an industry transform and measuring the people who came to represent those shifts, including figures like Rob Reiner, through the hard-earned lens of lived experience. When Eastwood is asked about Reiner, there's no rage, no cheap shots, no bitterness spilling out. His tone stays calm, reflective, grounded in something deeper, a belief that Hollywood has drifted from its original purpose. "I've never had a problem with Rob as a filmmaker," Eastwood says. "He's talented. You don't make the movies he's made without understanding character and timing." He gives credit where it's due, openly respecting Reiner's early work. Those films, to Clint, came from a moment when Hollywood cared more about craft than messaging. Stories were meant to bring people together, not sort them into camps. What troubles Eastwood isn't just Reiner, it's the shift surrounding him. Somewhere along the line, Eastwood reflects, the business stopped being about curiosity. It became about certainty. And in his view, certainty is dangerous in art. Reiner now represents a Hollywood circle that struggles with disagreement, often confusing strong beliefs with moral authority. Clint draws a sharp line between that mindset and his own path. "I never believed my job was to tell people what to think," he says. "My job was to show people who they are." Even his most debated films, westerns, war stories, or quiet character studies, were never lectures. Eastwood trusted audiences to think for themselves. According to Clint Eastwood, the real divide between him and Rob Reiner isn't politics, it's philosophy. "Rob wants to win arguments," Eastwood says. "I want to ask questions." He points back to a time when Hollywood thrived on creative tension, when artists with radically different views could still work side by side without forcing agreement. That world, to him, feels almost unrecognizable now. There was a time when you could disagree and still respect each other, Eastwood recalls. Today, disagreement is treated like a personal flaw instead of a necessary part of growth. In Clint's eyes, Reiner's loud activism reflects something bigger, a cultural shift where entertainers confuse volume with virtue and certainty with truth. At 95, Eastwood isn't chasing applause or relevance. He's speaking from decades of lived experience